And your name, so we know who you are?
Jeff Cleesby.
And who are you with, Jeff?
I'm a commercial officer with the Commercial Service, which is part of the U.S. Department of Commerce.
And what does Commercial Service mean?
Well, it used to be called the U.S. and Foreign Commercial Service. Or widely known in embassies and consulates overseas as the Foreign Commercial Service, FCS. So we were created in about 1980 to run
1980, that's soon.
Yes.
Yeah, that's not long. Yeah.
No, it's not. It's not so long.
Yeah.
I mean, the function had been performed.
I see, but
since,
just by
since the 18th century.
I see,
obviously,
diplomats did
export promotion.
Yeah.
But it was we became a separate unit in 1980.
I see.
And previous to that, the commercial portfolios had been handled by the State Department.
Now, when you say a commercial portfolio, that means like the business activities of doing stuff overseas versus the...
Yes, supporting U.S. companies overseas.
I see.
Now,
so your office helps companies with doing business overseas.
Yes.
That's what commercials means then?
Yes.
Right.
And that's why it was called the Foreign Commercial Service.
I see, okay.
The name changed to the U.S. and Foreign Commercial Service because we have a domestic network of 100 offices throughout the U.S., which complements the work of the overseas offices.
So that's what you're here. We're in Arlington, Virginia. So you're by the Department of Commerce in Arlington, Virginia, to help businesses here deal with the embassies overseas that helps commercial activities with U.S. businesses and overseas.
Yes, and it's primarily export promotion. But we are the same organization that operates the commercial sections of the U.S. embassies and consulates overseas.
So the Department of Commerce, which you're part of, has a similar person in an embassy overseas that you talk to, and that's like your contact overseas to help businesses.
Well, actually, it's often me because I'm part of the overseas network.
Oh, I see.
So
you just in town visiting? Or
well, part of our career demands that we spend one tour. And a tour is a 2-year assignment in a domestic office to understand how it works, what the issues are, so that we can better serve U.S. companies when they are introduced to us.
So this is your hazard duty tour.
Yes, Arlington, Virginia hazard tour. So.
Well, let's get down to it. Now, what I'm trying to do is encourage businesses, all size, but primarily smaller, medium-sized business, to be aware of you guys and how you could help them sell overseas, because I think that's the biggest market we got now.
That's good.
Nobody in the States has money anymore.
Well, actually, one of our former directors general, the boss of our organization, described us as the best kept secret in government.
Oh, so you want to solve that problem.
That's part of our mission here in the domestic network, is to make companies aware that we exist and the range of services that we're able to offer. And then promote U.S. exports.
So you're trying to get a company or an entrepreneur here sell their stuff overseas and help them, right?
If they want to.
If they want to.
if they're ready. The Secretary of Commerce has been making lots of speeches recently about the need to increase the exports that we have.
I see there's a White House initiative now.
The National Export Initiative. And part of the challenge for us is that only 1% of U.S. companies export at all.
1%?
1%.
Wow.
But now...
Wow.
That's of all companies. That includes mom and pop stores and that kind of thing.
If you have a delicatessen, you're probably not going to export.
Right. Who knows?
Right.
Who knows how creative you might want to be?
You could FedEx that pastrami sandwich to expats in London. Huh?
And another part of the challenge is that of those companies that do export, only 60% of them export to one market.
So they're only going to one market.
So that's 1.6%
of
of U.S. companies export to just one market. Well, if you can export...
What was the total amount? 1% export?
Yes.
And then
of that,
so about half of those are only going to one market.
Yeah, but a little more than half are only going to one market.
Wow.
So if you can go to one market, you can go to many markets.
And why does the government spend resources doing this?
Jobs.
That's
the bottom line.
So in other words, if you could help a business grow and create jobs by helping them sell their stuff overseas, we're creating jobs in the United States.
Exactly.
So you're going to get me a job. Huh?
Hopefully. And there's no reason why not.
Right. Yeah.
Because I think that U.S. companies, a lot fewer of them go international than our foreign competitors.
Huh. And why do you think? I mean, we have such a global economy now. I mean, you can find the weather anywhere in the world online. What stops them?
Personally, I think that part of the challenge is that the U.S. market itself is so large.
I see.
And a company can sustain itself for the foreseeable future only operating in this market. If we take European countries, for example, their markets are relatively small, maybe 50 million, the size of a U.S. region. They have to go international at a much earlier stage, even though they might be going to other countries in the EU or countries close by. At least they're meeting those challenges. They're making that decision and that management commitment to engage in overseas markets. And having started the ball rolling, it's not so much of a challenge later on to continue. Now, another characteristic of the U.S. market is it's probably one of the most open, transparent, and competitive. So if you are able to compete in this market, there's absolutely no reason why you shouldn't compete in overseas markets.
You make it here, you can make it anywhere, huh?
It's sort of. I mean,
you never know.
All other things being equal.
Exactly.
Obviously, there are going to be significant challenges, and some markets are just very tough to crack. But certainly, companies that reach a certain size in the United States must be doing something right. They must have some product or process or service that distinguishes them, and there's no reason why they shouldn't export those.
Walk us through a process like, if you're a little business in town and you say, well, this may be interesting to people overseas. How would they find you, and what kind of help would you offer?
They would find you by watching this video, probably.
The website will be here.
The website, www.export.gov.
Really? www.export.gov?
It's
a great one, and there you would find what? Local offices?
A large amount of information about overseas markets. And yes, certainly all the contact information you need to find the office near you, as well as all of our overseas posts.
I see.
And to identify within those offices which of the staff members handle particular industry sectors. We work along sectoral lines. So here in Northern Virginia, I handle defense, aerospace, transportation, big energy. And I have other colleagues here who handle different sectors. So when a company comes through the door or we meet them at an event, we would ascertain which sector they're in and have that person with a certain amount of sectoral expertise deal with them. If we look at the product, we counsel them, decide that yes, it's a good time to export, and we maybe select a market that they or we think
so you help them
potential.
Decide if they're ready or not, in other words.
Yes. Possibly. I don't think it takes much to be ready.
I see.
And you have to operate for a couple of years in the U.S. If you're a manufacturing operation, then you're probably going to have sales in the millions of dollars rather than the tens of thousands. But mainly what it takes is, I guess, vision and management commitment. That's what determines whether they're ready. It's disastrous to begin to engage in overseas markets if the commitment isn't there. Because the challenges will be significant. I mean, primarily in terms of time, energy, not necessarily financial resources, but
so it takes a time commitment to make this happen.
Yes, there's a lot of learning to do. So unless you have senior management commitment to do it. It's not going anywhere. But other than that, the resources that you need not be that significant. And our network overseas exists to make that job easy for you.
And what kind of things will help the business that you could do?
Well, primarily we operate in four main areas. We provide information, market intelligence.
So if, like, a friend of mine who actually just invented something called beer chips.
Okay.
Right. You know, like beer nuts.
Yes.
These are chips, but flavor of beer.
And no alcoholic content?
No alcohol.
You just lost my interest.
Right. But obviously he got one contract here, and then he found he's up in Oregon and found you guys or someone similar up there to sell his beer chips overseas.
Okay.
Yeah. So something. So you said information. So like you would help them find information where these beer chips may be.
We have, as I said, 150 offices overseas. Inside those offices, we have American officers like myself who are temporary in that country, but we have what we call foreign service nationals. They are employees of the embassy who are nationals of the country where they're operating. They track their industry sectors within their countries. They know, it's their job to know what's going on in those industry sectors. It's their job to develop contacts within those industry sectors, both industry and government contacts, so that an American firm coming through the door, they will be able to deliver all of their knowledge to that firm, advise them on the market conditions, and find them a partner, a suitable partner in that market.
So in other words, I find a local person like you here, and you, we decide, maybe Germany's good for beer chips, and then you find your counterpart in the embassy there who knows the market and helps you make a connection. The business with someone to help you market in Germany.
Right. I can give you a real example. It's a company that is making high technology pallets. These are from composite plastic materials.
I see.
To compete with wooden pallets, which take a lot of significant environmental impact. A lot of trees. Right. China doesn't have much forestry. So they are looking at exporting pallets to China. And these can be standard pallets or they can be smart pallets. You can embed in them radio frequency ID or GPS systems for inventory control.
Right.
And as it happens, there are a lot of containers that come from China filled with products that go back empty.
Wow.
So here's an opportunity to sell some pallets to China. And the market potential of that looks fantastic.
A lot of factories must have a lot of need a lot of pallets.
And their supply chains are not as palletized as they are in the U.S. So there's significant.
So in other words, the Commerce Department, you and you guys in China help make a deal like that happen for that business.
Right. I met with the company. I knew nothing about pallets one day. The next day, I was almost an expert and absolutely sold.
Now you can run for
now I can talk on TV about pallets. I then introduced them to our office in China. We have 100 people in China. It's a big market.
Wow.
So it took a while to find out.
You had to find the right person in the embassy.
Who in our office, embassies and consulates, we've got different branch offices, who was the right guy to do pallets.
Right.
And from that point, he has to become a believer just the way I am. So we organize a conference call to get everybody on the same page. So he understands the product, he understands where the company's coming from, what its objectives are, what type of partner it wants to engage with there. And then at some point they will travel to China and meet with the partners that he's helped identify for them. And start doing business.
So he will find the contacts and say, hey, would you be interested in doing business with this guy in Arlington?
Yeah.
And the guy gets on a plane, goes over and tries to put the deal together. Wow.
Right.
And what does Commerce Department charge for that?
We have a two-tier pricing system. If you are a large company, that service would cost you $2,300. If you are a small company, that costs you $700.
$700.
And but wait a second. But if you've never used our services before, there is a one-time introductory offer. Half price for the... doesn't sound like government, does it?
Right. It sounds like a infomercial.
Yes, right. Half price for the first time you've used us. So
$350?
$350.
$350.
That's going to be less than one night in his hotel.
Absolutely. Even in Arlington. Yeah. Now, wow, for $350, the Commerce Department will find somebody in China or anywhere in the world to help do a deal to sell my stuff there.
Yeah.
And they have the content.
And behind that, there is probably a month's work for our trade specialists going out, sending product information to the potential partners, engaging, in this case, engaging with trade associations and perhaps engaging with the Chinese government, who have a commitment to improving the efficiency of their...
So if I went on Google and said I want to sell overseas or something like that, I'd probably get some consultant would charge me tens of thousands of dollars.
Right.
You're saying it takes a month's worth, or
we have nothing against consultants.
Exactly.
I mean, we work with consultants.
Right.
And I don't think we're driven by...
No, I was one.
Okay.
That's what I would do. I'd find you, get all the information, and resell it.
We're not driven by the $350 either.
Obviously,
we'd go out of business. But the idea is that here's a company, the pallet maker. It's not exporting. Needs to export. When that happens, when the deal is made, they will be increasing their factory capacity here, creating jobs in the U.S.
That's fantastic.
As well as, becoming involved in a market that's dynamic, increasing their knowledge of that market, but also their own capabilities, and perhaps exposure to a lot of ideas that they might not necessarily encounter.
The world's
in
changing,
the US.
man. You just can't sell the jersey anymore.
If we're not driven by the $350, then what are we driven by? Our performance measure is on export successes. That guy that I'm working with in our office in Beijing, he wants a deal to happen so that he can report that deal. So when he's made the introduction...
So you're like a real estate broker, man. You want to make a deal happen.
We want to make a deal. We don't get a percentage.
Exactly, but that's how you keep score.
But that's how we keep score, exactly. And it keeps us focused, it keeps us honest, it keeps us... we don't get distracted by things that are not going to result in some concrete
Now, so
success.
that's the federal level. I mean, and you have other kind of major services besides that marriage broker thing, or?
Well, information was the first one. And in the old days, 20 years ago, information was a very important part of what we did. Now it's less so because of the access to Google and everything. But still quite important. In some markets, Kazakhstan, for example, there may not be that much commercial information around.
You would know. I mean, if you're Googling for something in
That's
French,
right.
have a language difficulty.
Our trade specialists overseas are required to produce a reasonable number of reports in their industry sector.
Like market study kind of reports to see what's good. Yeah, I see.
So they choose it, they clear it with their supervisors. Sometimes headquarters in Washington dictates that they want a particular industry covered for the whole world. So they will tell them what
foreign desk officers at Commerce Department, country desk officers?
Yes.
So we have country desk officers then for every...
I'll explain how it works.
Okay.
We've got... we're part of... the Commercial Service is part of the International Trade Administration of the Department of Commerce. Other parts of the Trade Administration include an office called Market Access and Compliance, and that is the department which is only in headquarters and don't have overseas offices, but they travel sometimes. They cover particular geographic regions and particular countries. So there is a desk officer covering that. There is another part which is called manufacturing and services. and they liaise with the American business community, very often associations, have round tables with industry leaders, often their Washington offices, to keep track of the issues and challenges that are facing that industry. So we have a sectoral office and we have a geographic office.
And the geographic ones are where the country desk officers are, like.
That's right. And because it's market access and compliance, they are dealing very often with complaints from American companies that are operating in a particular country that is, perhaps not performing the way it should. So they work very closely with our overseas posts to resolve those issues.
If I was interested, say, I think France would be a good place to sell cowboy boots or something. Would I come to an office like you locally first, or would I maybe the France guy in the country desk office? Or
if you have a problem, you would go to the France guy.
I see.
If you met him at a cocktail party, he would either refer you to us or refer you to our office in Paris.
I see. So I could talk directly with them.
Yeah, in theory, you should be able to walk into any of our offices globally, throughout the world or nationally, and access our services.
I see.
Now, if you're a Virginia company, you will be referred here firstly. Basically for what we call counseling, making sure that you understand what we do, how we work, what services we're able to offer, what we can't do, so that when we engage with the overseas post, it's efficient for them.
Exactly.
We say, here's a company A, wants gold key service, here's the information, get on with it. So it's more...
One thing is, the initiative from the White House on this, what special programs are involved in that? I haven't looked at it. I'll put them on the website when I finish, but do you know offhand or not?
I think it is largely just focusing attention on the need to export. There will be programs down the road, but I think raising the profile of the challenge for exporting is a major part of it. There will be additional resources, but in terms of what we do, it will be largely the same. The same types of programs, the same types of approach.